Hello and welcome to the Engaging Internal Comms podcast. This is episode 8 of series 2. This is the show for employee engagers and internal communicators who like to keep up to date with everything that is new in our profession. My name's Craig Smith from the Big Picture People. Hope you're enjoying this second series of the Engaging Internal Comms podcast. What we've got coming up for you next week is the third in this short series of solo episodes that I've been doing for you, which is all about meaning and organizational values. And that is going to be all about assessing your values. So if you have organizational values within your business or within your organization, what we're going to be looking at there are how can you assess how fit for purpose they are? Do they actually help us to make better decisions? Are they linked to our business strategy, etc.? So that's coming up next week. Week after that, I have a great interview with Nick Daggett from Invotra. Invotra are a business who look after and run intranets for their clients. And we're going to be looking at this area of intranets and how do you create a modern social intranet that meets expectations of employees, given the fact that everybody is now very digitally savvy, very digitally connected, and we're using lots of different platforms. Are intranets still relevant? And if so, what should we be looking for if we are developing an intranet? And then the next episode that we will have an interview on is on the 13th of April. And that is going to be an interview with Christina Veneva, who is from Atlantis Resorts, based out in Dubai, where she's going to be telling us all about the challenges of communicating to a 24-hour operation, a 24-hour business. So I think, again, you'll find that really fascinating. And I think there's lots of transferable learnings, even if your business isn't 24 hours a day, that you will be able to take from that. One thing that we're running at the Big Picture People that I'd like to share with you that may be of interest is that on the 29th of April 2021 at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, we are going to be running a free webinar. And the webinar is called Helping Employees to Understand Your Organization's Big Picture. Now, the whole point of this is that what we find with the clients that we work with and the organizations that we work with is that business leaders generally find it difficult to explain and articulate the vision, the mission, the values of their organization to their employees. And that's usually because they're quite heavily connected to it. They're very close to the detail, but also it's a really, really complex message to try and communicate. And as we all probably know, when we don't communicate that big picture, it can cause us issues with employee engagement, employees not really understanding what their contribution makes to the organization and how it fits in with that big picture. And ultimately that can impact on customer service and other bottom line results. So what we're going to be doing in this webinar is we're going to be showing some practical and informative tips for you and your leaders, and showing some simple but very powerful techniques that leaders can use to communicate these complex messages in an engaging and sustainable way. So if you're interested in that, as I say, it's the 29th of April 2021 at 3 p.m. in the afternoon UK time. You can sign up for that. It's totally free on our website, and if you go to thebigpicturepeople.co.uk, and at the top of our page you'll see our menu for our website, and you'll see events. If you click on that and scroll down, it's the first event actually on there. We've got a couple of events coming up in the near future, but the first event, helping employees understand your organization's big picture. You can click on the book now link. It will take you to a booking link. It's totally free, and you can sign up there. And obviously, if you know anyone else who might be interested in that, please feel free to share that with them. So just back to the podcast. I've explained that what we've got coming up in future episodes. If you want to know in advance what's coming up and and also get an email on the day that the podcast goes out, why don't you sign up to our mailing list? It's you can do that via our website, thebigpicturepeople.co.uk, and our podcast page. There's a signing up form there where you can get an email every week, tells you what's in this show's content, what the episode is this week, and also what's coming up in the following week as well. And then final thing with the with our podcast, if you could share it with one other person that you know who might find it of interest, if you could just share today's episode or any episodes that you've listened to in the past that you found particularly helpful with someone in your network, it would be hugely helpful to us, would really help us to grow our audience and ultimately bigger audience means we can attract more and more compelling guests for you to listen to and find out all about their internal comms and employee engagement work. And on that note, let's go on to today's interview. As we travel through this pandemic experience, I think it's very easy to assume that we've made one lot of transitions in our communications and that they've remained static throughout. But as we've probably all experienced, that the waves of the pandemic and the way it's affecting our organizations and ourselves is not like that. We've had to evolve, we've had to change during this last 10 to 12 months while we've been going through the pandemic. So I wanted to talk to a professional who's working in a large organization who initially started out down one path of communications and how they were communicating to their people, but then have had to evolve that as time has gone on, and as emotions have changed, as people's attitudes have changed, as we've become more and more used to various things. We've become maybe desensitized to channels that were working initially, but are now we are having to look at different ways of doing things, basically. So that was what I wanted to look at today, looking at the experience of going through a situation like we're all going through at the moment with the pandemic, how it affects the way that we initially communicate, and then how we evolve that communication process within our organizations, to see what we can learn from that about not only how we would deal with any future crises in the future, but also how we can apply some of those learnings to our communications approaches and styles of communicating with our organizations going forward. So that's what today's conversation is all about. So my interviewee today is Tanya Pakhuta. Tanya is Senior Global Internal Communications Manager at LeasePlan, and LeasePlan is a leader in two leading markets, and one of those is car as a service for new cars, and the second is high quality 3 to 4 year old used car market. So Tanya, who is a fluent English, Dutch, Ukrainian, and Russian speaker, is passionate about communications and is also experienced across a diverse range of industries with expertise in internal communications at a global level. Prior to LeasePlan, Tanya has worked at Canon and several other multinational businesses, and Tanya is also a qualified dance instructor, and we're going to be finding out all about how she's combined that with her talented IC role in a moment. So good morning, Tanya. How are you?
Hi, Craig. I'm very well, thank you. Happy to be talking to you today.
Fantastic. And it's absolutely brilliant to be talking to you. Remind me where you're based, please, Tanya.
Well, I'm here in rainy, cold Amsterdam, which is a fantastic city, even despite its often dreadful weather.
Yeah, it's a fantastic city. I love Amsterdam. So I'm regardless of the weather, and I've traipsed through Amsterdam in on some very wet days, but also some lovely days as well. So yeah, it's fantastic. So I gave a little bit of an introduction to LeasePlan there. I'm sure you can do probably a better job than I can. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about the business?
Yeah, no, you've done actually perfectly perfectly well, very much on message, Craig. Yeah, so for those who don't know, let me just recap maybe a little bit. LeasePlan is a car leasing company operating in two large and growing markets. So car as a service for new cars, and a high quality 3 to 4 year old used car market through our carnext.com business. So essentially, just to put it in simple words, what LeasePlan does is purchase its vehicles from the manufacturers and then funds and manages these vehicles for its customers. And we are also providing, of course, a complete end-to-end service for a typical contract duration of 3 to 4 years. So that's it about car as a service. Now, if we talk about carnext.com, this is a pan-European digital marketplace for high quality used cars. And they drive anytime, anywhere, and it's actually supplied. So the fleet from these high quality used cars is supplied with vehicles from our own LeasePlan's fleet, as well as from some third-party partners. Altogether, we have about 1.9 million cars on the road in over 30 countries. So you can
Wow.
imagine the magnitude of
Big.
this.
That's big. And how many people work at LeasePlan, Tanya?
We've got about 8,000 people currently working
Okay.
in around 32 countries worldwide.
Yeah, Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. And you're obviously responsible as a global as global like internal comms for all of those comms to all of those all of those 8,000 people. Yeah.
Yes, precisely. I mean, we do have, of course, internal comms focal points in each country who are very helpful. But essentially, yes, that's under my wing.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. And so, I mean, what we're going to talk about today is various ways you've been using innovative ways to keep people engaged during the pandemic.
Mhm.
We're recording this at the beginning of 2021, and we just had a quick chat there before we started recording about the fact that that we're in another cycle at the moment, certainly in mainly in Europe anyway, of lockdowns and restrictions and also. Disappointment, I guess, after the optimism that I think we thought of new year, new opportunities, perhaps. But I think it would be really interesting because I know when we spoke originally, you'd done some really great work in keeping people engaged. So maybe let's just sort of dial back. Seems like 10 years ago, but it was only about
Mhm.
9-10 months ago, back to sort of March, April time, I guess, when all of this started to really kick off. I mean, just do you want to kind of give us a kind of heads up on what you did in the business and from an IC perspective, and some of the particular challenges that you had as a business, given the global distribution and also the market that you're in? I guess it would be interesting to touch upon that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you're very right when you say, I mean, a lot of things have changed since they've announced the global pandemic. But if you kind of look at it, we are also sort of going in circles.
Yeah.
So we've been through the first wave of lockdowns, and then we've had some freedom. Well, at least in Europe, we did. And then we were back again to lockdowns, and now we see no end to them, even though the vaccine is already becoming available. But of course, I just say that for a comms professional, this was a very challenging period of time. And from one day to another, me and my team had to just simply rethink the way we were going to, operate and approach this huge beast known as COVID. And we had to figure it out fast. And one thing we realized very quickly is that silence wasn't an option.
Mm,
So the very first thing we've learned is that it was truly better to over communicate than under communicate. And that's when we put all hands on deck. We realize also all the carefully crafted plans that we've had made before for 2020 could have been just thrown in the bin,
mm,
and we just had to start over. um, and I have to say that LeasePlan senior leadership team played a key part in it as well. I mean, these guys just simply knew what to do, and they knew how to do it, and they were very responsive, and they were very eager to communicate. So the first thing we actually did, in the spirit of true honesty and transparency to our employees, is we made our CEO, CCO, and other senior leaders available for 3 hours every week, every Wednesday, to speak directly to our employees on an all employee call. Why I say 3 hours is because of 32 countries, right? You can imagine there's countries in different time zones. And,
yeah.
a question I typically get asked here is, why wouldn't you simply record it and replay the message or share the message digitally? I mean, yes, you would be right to say that, but for our CEO, it was really a priority to make himself available to people and know that he's there for them, and he takes the time out of his diary to really walk everyone through what is happening and make them really understand what is it that they can do in this situation. So
Mm, mm,
some also some very practical things, on how to how to talk to our customers, how to make sure we are very transparent with them when we are talking about their contracts, and just things like that. So
And what sort of uptake did you get on that? I mean, was it mandatory that people had to attend, or was it optional? And what sort of uptake were you getting? How many people were kind of taking part in those 3 hour sessions from a kind of an employee perspective?
well, of course, I mean, we can't force anyone to do
Yeah,
anything.
yeah,
However, I must say that people were very hungry for these sort of comms, because this was also the first time for us that our CEO was so available to everyone. And I think people just really needed that. So we had thousands of people dialing in on each call. Every week, and they were just, they were just very eager to hear, what does the man have to say
yeah,
today?
yeah.
What are we doing? So I think that played really a key role in our strategy when we just
Brilliant.
started.
Yeah. Okay. No, fantastic. And so I mean, that's an amazing commitment, as you say. I think it's very. I think I've heard this a lot from organisations. The visibility and transparency and willingness for leaders to sort of step forward and probably field some fairly difficult questions as well. I would imagine, and have to, be put on the spot, I guess. And did you get? Was there a kind of an interactive element? Did you get people asking questions, or was it did people? So I tend to spend, I guess, obviously it was an opportunity for your leader to sort of explain more, but was it interactive with the questions, and how did you kind of manage that process?
So we, as in the internal communications team, managed the Q&A part for him,
Yeah.
because we really wanted to take all the time that we could just to really take people through what was happening. So then employees could log in their questions real time while our leaders were talking, and then we would, of course, get back to them immediately with the responses.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. Okay, I mean that was an amazing sort of response, I guess. One of the things that you talked about when we spoke on the interview is that you'd also implement a range of activities that to help people kind of stay connected, and it was an interesting when you mentioned this that you'd chosen Instagram initially. I think you'd used Yammer and you'd used other platforms, but you'd kind of centered around Instagram. And is that still the case? You're still using Instagram at the moment? Um,
Yes, we are. I mean,
yeah,
a lot of things have changed since.
yeah,
But yeah, like let me just explain that to you a little bit more. So, of course, our number one priority was, to stay afloat as a business. And these CEO calls have really managed, to provide us with a platform to ensure that everyone is up to date. Then there was another thing, of course, is people's physical, spiritual, intellectual, and community needs that we
mm,
wanted to address. And our CEO, brilliant man, he just said, guys, you just really need to make this happen now. This is our chance. This is now or never.
mm,
Now
mm,
we're really going to, be there for our people and really build a community, or build on the community that we have built over the past 50 years here at LeasePlan. But now is really where people really need us. So, of course, working from home, and especially in lockdown circumstances, what was not something that LeasePlan was used to, and not even, let's say, 1 or 2 days a week. I mean, this was a bit of a new concept to all of us. And of course, as the comms department, we were presented with a challenge. Okay, how do we make this happen digitally as well for our
yeah,
people?
yeah.
Um, and within 2 weeks, we had a fully up and running platform, which we called Next Gen LeasePlan Community, packed with activities for each day of the week to feed our body, mind, soul, and community. So these were,
Mm.
so to say, our four buckets where we would share information around and make activities around. And indeed, as a let's say a bit of an business that's been around for a while, we had a fairly standard pack of internal comms channels. So you would
Mm.
have your global internet, the local internets, all 32 of them.
Yeah.
We would have a company newsletter that everybody reads religiously. Still, we would have digital signage in some of our offices and global email. So this, a pretty traditional mix. We were already looking into starting on Yammer, but we just really wanted to do it, let's say, in a sort of a planned and well thought through manner.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then, of course, COVID happened, right? So within 2 weeks, we launched a separate platform. We launched Yammer and we launched Instagram as well.
Yeah.
So why Instagram? You're probably wondering, because
Yeah. Yeah.
a bit of an unusual choice for.
It's an interesting one, definitely. I've not heard. I never know. Oh, Yammer and all of that, but I think it's Anyway, you're going to tell us all about it. It's definitely what works for you. So yeah, why Instagram?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think other companies have experienced that as well within their IT environments. Is the let's say the security and the different tools and platforms that you could use and couldn't use, because all the efforts of our IT department has gone into creating this secure working from home environment for people. We've had quite a bit of restriction on what we could use and what we couldn't use. So what did we want from our platform? So we wanted interactivity and engagement, and we wanted something familiar that people know already how to use, so we don't need to invest in extensive training
Mm,
or things
mm.
like that. And then we kind of looked at each other in our team and we said, well, that's just Instagram. uh, One other key element that we wanted to implement is the live streaming. So that is also where Instagram was the easiest solution for us to get. So yes, we started using an external channel for internal communications purposes.
Yeah.
Now that was, of course, also done next to Yammer. So we would have this distinction between Instagram and Yammer, where things that couldn't go for a number of reasons on Instagram, they could go on Yammer. So
Yeah.
we had these two channels working hand in hand for our
So,
people.
what was some? So, I mean, it'd be great if you could give us some examples of how you used Instagram. And I did mention at the beginning you qualified dance instructor. I don't know whether those two things came together at all. But yeah, how do you give me some practical examples of how you were using Instagram? Because I think it's a fantastic idea, as you say, and I think I really like the idea of least path of least resistance, least friction. If people are used to using a platform, it's so much easier to I have to give them something new to learn or to familiarize themselves with. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to find out how you actually used it.
Yes. So, if you recall, I mentioned those four buckets: body, mind,
Yeah.
soul, and community, right? So, for each bucket, we had a list of activities that we would offer to our employees to partake in every day. So, each week we would publish a schedule of what was happening when and on which day, and people could just follow it. So, for example, if we talk about the body bucket, we've introduced high intensity interval trainings, even for kids, because that was a problem as well, right? That kids all of a sudden were 24/7 at home, and parents had to figure out very quickly
Mhm.
what to do with them.
Yeah.
We've had yoga lessons, and here's where it comes: dance workouts.
Ah, that's
Uh,
the link. There's the link.
Yes, exactly. So, yoga was also taught by one of our employees in LeasePlan Greece. She's also a certified yoga instructor. So, every, I think, Monday and Wednesday morning, 7 a.m., Central European Eastern Time, if you turned on, the Instagram live feed, the stories, you would see our lease planner, Evangelia, teaching a yoga class to anyone who was interested. I mean, any lease planner who was interested. We had high intensity interval trainings also with professional trainers. And I also decided, to take off my internal comms specialist hat for an hour 2 times a week and teach the dance classes that I would normally teach at a gym. Now, I was also very, very happy to do that because I couldn't have done it with my gym. And I needed something to keep me going. So this was also a perfect way for me to
Fantastic.
connect with my employees on a different level.
Yeah, and so I mean, all of those things. So I can't. I'm sorry, I should have written down the buckets that you mentioned about that. So was it fair to say that you're using Instagram more kind of for the? I don't want to kind of, for more of the social or the mental health and well-being stuff. Or were you using it also for some more kind of businessy type stuff as well, or was it you kept the Yammer for the business stuff and you kept Instagram for the more kind of keeping people connected and well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. You're right there. So we used Instagram mostly for the live streaming activities. So these
Mm,
were all the physical activities, but also we had mindfulness sessions daily.
mm,
We had something that comes from the soul bucket. We had introduction to Enneagram, which is a system that explains all the different personality types.
mm,
And we've invited some guest speakers to talk to our lease planners about that. But yes, obviously, things, for example, like one of the most popular things we've had going on is Meet the Team series, where I would interview our senior leaders from the organization about what they do, their focus points, how are they responding to the COVID challenges, so on and so forth.
mm,
So actually our people felt way more engaged with managing director of LeasePlan Finland, let's say, yeah, that
mm,
they
mm.
would normally not have any touch points with.
Mm, mm. Excellent. So, I mean, and that's absolutely fantastic. And Yammer, you said you were using, as well. And was Yammer uptake with Yammer? Has that been fairly successful as well?
To my great surprise, I have to say, yes, it was, because I was always a little bit reluctant to just open up those gates, if
Mm,
you know what I mean. So I really wanted to have a structure in place before I was going to do that. But you see, life has other plans for
mm,
us. And
mm.
all of a sudden, it all worked out very well. People knew how to use it, and they just kept on engaging with all the content. I mean, everybody knew how hashtags work,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
and that's when we got to do some of our most fun stuff. I mean, we've had a lip sync challenge where each country picked a song that most responded to them, in terms of all the COVID challenges. And I think we've had some I Will Survive. We had
Yeah.
MC Hammer, Can't Touch This, because literally you can't touch this. Um, and some other really really cool stuff. I mean, we've seen our CEO lip sync and dance in his living room together with his daughter. Um, Another program that was, I think, must have been the most popular one is what we called the LeasePlan Games.
Mm.
So each week we launched a challenge with one of our colleagues, and our CEO actually kicked it off with a plank dance with his daughter. So if there are any TikTok fans out there, they would know what I'm talking about.
Okay, right. Yeah, I don't. So, but I'll nod and pretend I do. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and we've had submissions, and we were voting each week for the person who we thought was the best in this challenge, and then launch another challenge. So we've seen people juggling, dancing, spinning balls on their fingertips,
Yeah.
doing burpees. I mean, all sorts of stuff.
Fantastic. So that's incredible. I mean, what I want to do is just sort of maybe now And because what I'm sensing is there was a huge, there's a lot of energy and enthusiasm and creativity that kind of sort of popped out of the bottle there when it was needed. And like you say, if you'd planned to use Yammer, you would have probably done it in a far more kind of planful way, and you kind of thrown in at the deep end, so you had to just get on with it and use it. I guess just sort of dialing forward now to where we are now, because I guess like all of us, and I think we kind of touched upon this before we started recording. I think we've had to kind of go again, and I kind of sort of dig even deeper into our energy reserves to find new ways of keeping this going. I mean, looking at where we are now and where you were then, and how how are you keeping people going through this second, well, not the second, third, or fourth, depending on where you are, but you know what I mean? There's this kind of another sort of lockdown, back into kind of Groundhog Day stuff, working from home, all the things we thought we hoped we would be doing in 2021 look like they're going to be kind of more pushed back towards, at least towards the end of the year. How are you keeping that energy going through either those channels that you talked about, but also from a professional perspective, in terms of, just keeping things fresh and engaging, and not allowing people to just sort of maybe drop off and disappear out off the radar, or forget what they're, what we're all about as a company, I guess. It'd be good to still touch on that, I think, if that's okay, Tanya.
Sure. Yes. So yeah, you're exactly right. So I mean, we've done so much in such a short span of time. I mean, someone out there must have probably feel bombarded with all the activities that we were putting out there. But that couldn't go on forever, right? So we had to transform into something else. So we had to look at our strategy almost weekly, and really ask each other the question is, okay, where are we now? What is the most important need from our employees that we need to satisfy at the moment? So because you can't go on singing and dancing around forever, um,
Yeah.
even if you're in a lockdown situation. So we've moved on in our strategy. And if we talk about specifically Instagram, for example, we have completely changed our approach on using it. So we didn't close it down, of course, because we have thousands of lease planners following it now. So what we've decided to do with it is to rebrand it into an employer branding platform. So now for us, it has become really the platform where we show to the outside world what LeasePlan is all about. We give them the feeling of how it feels, to be a lease planner. What does it mean to be a lease planner? Who are those people? As well as we showcase some of the really cool stuff we do in our business. So that is now also a channel that we would like our customers to follow. That people who might interview with LeasePlan for a position, our suppliers, our partners. So we've completely changed our communication approach there, and it's also going pretty well. And of course, it's all new for us, so we are figuring out step by step as we go. But this is currently the focus for Instagram. And if we talk about other things, we've decided rather than to have 5 activities per day, 5 days a week. We've decided to pick a couple of big projects that we could focus on, no matter what the circumstances in the world are, to help us connect employees to each other and really keep that sense of belongingness that we've developed. And one of those projects that I'm particularly keen on is called LeasePlan Runs to the Moon, where our employees are encouraged to walk, run, or bike, of course, Amsterdam bike, the distance from Earth to the Moon. And every mile they walk, run, or bike turns into money for charities that support mental health. So
Right.
we've just launched it a couple of weeks back, and employees are absolutely ecstatic. They are posting pictures from their runs or walks. They take their kids with them. We have a leaderboard where you can see at all times, who's the first, the second, and the third
Yeah.
line, and everybody is super happy that they have, a good reason to to just leave their house and go for a walk or a run. I mean, you don't have to be, training for a marathon or something like that. You could just
Mm.
simply go for a walk with your family, log those miles into the app. We've partnered for that with Charity Miles app, and at any time you would see how many miles you've done, how many miles your colleagues have done, and this is something that we are going to to have for the year of 2021. So this
Yeah.
is not a one-time thing or a one-week thing. No, this is a collective goal, collective objective that we want to reach as a community by the end of
Yeah.
this year.
That's really nice. So that's interesting how that's evolved then. So I mean, there was a lot. I mean, the Instagram obviously now is, and how did your employees take to the fact that Instagram, which is something you'd obviously majored on last year, now is sort of the emphasis for that has changed? Was that something that they kind of bought into? Did you get any pushback on that at all, or actually, it sounds like obviously you've migrated into other ways of satisfying that need though. But was
Mhm.
that a challenge re-educating people into we don't use Instagram for that anymore? We're now using this, or we've shifted emphasis a little bit?
I think it happened sort of organically for
Right.
everyone, and everyone just understood what was happening, and we obviously involved them also a lot in the content that we push out. So if you were to open our next gen LeasePlan account on Instagram at the moment, you would see that it's full of faces,
Mm,
quotes, testimonials from our employees. Every second Friday, we have a lease planner who is taking over our Instagram. So
mm,
they are doing what we call a day in a life of. So that's the way for us to learn more about each other. So what
mm,
does it mean to be a commercial account director? What does it mean to be an insurance manager? What does it mean to be a marketing manager in Greece? And how does it differ from a marketing manager in the UK? So these are kind of the things that we are busy with at the moment, and as well as really positioning ourselves as the forward-thinking company in terms of
mm.
diversity and inclusion. That's also a really big one on our agenda at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So any other platforms that you've kind of transitioned through as as this saga has unfolded over the last 10 months or so, that's been a big shift. Any other platforms that you're using differently now to how you'd maybe immediately started using them at the beginning of the pandemic?
I think we've developed a bit more on Yammer as the time went through.
Yeah.
We've also adopted, of course, Microsoft Teams way of working, and something that I really think was a great thing to do is we've kind of plotted our global internet into Microsoft Teams. So whenever our employees open up their Microsoft Teams to go into a meeting or call, they would immediately see the glimpse of what's happening in the organization.
Right.
And that might seem like a very simple thing to do.
Mm,
However, that took us quite a while working together with the digital team to make sure that it worked seamlessly for everyone, also on their mobile devices.
mm, mm.
And that kind of also solved for me personally the issue of having almost too many channels, if you know what I mean, and having to juggle them all. So now we have them all in one place.
Mm.
They're all accessible to everyone. Everybody knows where to find them, and I've seen a real big spike in our data in terms of the views and in terms of the readership, and the comments and the likes have gone through the roof, and
Yeah,
that is a really big thing for LeasePlan.
that's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, it hasn't always been that way. Let's put it that way.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, it sounds to me as though you and your organization have adapted as you would have to in any, given the kind of magnitude of what we've been facing. But what I'm just interested, just to kind of bring things to a conclusion, is what have you learned professionally? What have you learned also? Do you think as an organisation? And so let's be optimistic and say in at least in 12 months' time, we're back to some sense of normality. I don't think don't think anyone agrees it's going to be like it was this time last year. Even when we can mingle and mix and the vaccine or whatever, we're kind of we don't have to socially distance anymore, or not to the extent that we are now. What are some of the things that you will take forward professionally, but also as an organization, that you've learned from this whole sort of experience that we've been through over the last 10 months or so?
Yeah. So we as a team, and of course me personally, have learned so much this year. I jokingly say to my colleagues that the pandemic might have been the best thing that happened to our careers, and I know that might sound dark,
Mm,
but I think people who are listening to this will understand. The world has changed completely overnight, and as communicators, we had to stay ahead, act fast, be creative, not be afraid. And the key learning for me was also to see how eager our employees were to engage with each other while staying apart. I mean, that was really incredible to see that
mm,
from a traditional organization like LeasePlan, that people were actually so hungry for having contact with each other, engaging with each other, to building this true sense of community, and elevating our culture even further.
mm,
And all these initiatives we created for employees, they were so well received. And I mean, we've really gotten to know each other on a different level. We've met each other's families. We've seen each other singing, dancing, planking, juggling, doing all these things that if somebody told me 2 years ago that that would happen, I would have laughed in their face.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I really could not see that coming. Um, and that is something that money can't buy,
Mm,
really, and that is really a big testament to our culture at LeasePlan, and the people who work here, because the people, they are who, they make the company what it is. And I
mm,
would definitely like to retain that level of engagement, going forward. And this is one of those really big learnings for me. Another one is being honest and transparent at any time, and even in times like this when things aren't going right 100% of the time.
mm,
But it's
mm,
so important to just stay open and transparent, because by doing that, you're opening the doors for people to add value, to say, hey, I know how we can tackle this. And at the end of the day, everybody, for their own job satisfaction, they want to add value, right? They're not here for the
mm,
only for the paycheck. They want to feel like they contribute. And that is also something that we learned throughout this whole process, as we were becoming closer to each other
mm,
while we were apart.
mm. Oh, that's fantastic. I think you're right. I think it has been a tremendous opportunity to learn, and I hear this a lot from people I speak to, that for all the kind of things it's been bad for, personally, and for people who've had bereavements or losses or whatever, and lost their jobs perhaps. But I think for people who've been able to draw some inner strength, but also look at this as a fantastic opportunity to learn, not the one we would choose, but one that we can reflect on and draw upon, I think is really, really important. And I think that the things you've just talked about there are really important. I really hope organisations don't throw the baby out with the bathwater when they can go back to business
Yeah.
BAU. I keep hearing people talk about BAU all the time, and business as usual has to be actually business as unusual. I think
Right.
going forward, because we need to recognise that we can't just go back to the old ways of doing things in so many different areas. So no, I think that's really refreshing.
Yeah. Maybe just one thing to add here.
Sure, yeah.
I personally also, I'm still learning every day, and especially in this last year, and I will continue to learn, I'm sure, much more in 2021. And for me, the big key takeaway, personally, was that you shouldn't be afraid of things, and you shouldn't be afraid to be brave and be experimental almost, and be creative, and ask yourself things like, and what if? And what if
Mm,
we've done it this way? And what if we are going to, take an external channel and use it for internal purposes? I mean, why not? What's the worst thing that can happen?
mm, mm.
So, in that sense, as a comms professional, I realized, there's other ways of doing things. And they are actually more successful
Yeah.
if you make them more human, then you would really see the results.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think when you take away all the risk elements of it, and by thinking, like you say, what is the worst that can happen, and just let yourself try stuff. I think you sometimes, you're surprised, aren't you, that things work. And we found this ourselves with things we kind of got forced into having to do, but actually have turned out to be really successful. So yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, look, that's been really, really a fantastic conversation. I mean, we'd originally when we spoke a few months ago, we said we might talk about something else, but as we know at the moment, 3 months is the sort of even. Someone said, I listened to a show the other day, and I was listening to another podcast, and someone said on there that we've compressed probably 10 years of change into the last 9 months, organizationally, societally, and I think it's true in a lot of areas. We have been through a lot, and time compression has been sort of fairly dramatic. So we've evolved what we were going to talk about into something else, which I think is really, really valuable, which is how we've evolved as professionals during this whole kind of this whole crisis. So one thing I want to finish off with you, though, Tanya, I always finish off with the interview. You mentioned at the beginning you were a qualified dance instructor. I always
Mhm.
ask my interviewees one other thing, or usually one thing. You've given us two, one that, but not that people know you're a dance instructor, because obviously you've kind of revealed that talent internally. But something that people who work with you quite well or know you quite well don't know about you as a person, and it can be something personal, it can be something professional, it can be something you did in the past, it can be something you do now. So what's a sort of something that I mean, obviously I've only just met you, so anything you tell me will probably be a surprise. But something that people who know you quite well wouldn't know about you or don't know about you that you're willing to share with our listeners on this show.
Sure. So one thing that's quite a shocker to most of my friends, especially those who live in the Netherlands, is the fact that I only learned how to cycle at the age of 21.
Wow.
And that is a big shocker for especially Dutch people, because they almost learn how to bike before they learn how to walk.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is really something that everyone goes like, what? But
Yeah.
why? But how?
Yeah. And when were you in Amsterdam when you learned to cycle, or were you at some
Yes.
yeah, wow. And
I
that is a baptism by fire, isn't it? Learning to I could imagine, because I've observed, I'm a cyclist, and obviously cycling etiquette in Amsterdam is entirely unique to Amsterdam. I don't know anywhere
Mhm.
else in the world where the bike has, quite rightly, I think, quite such preeminence, and also there are quite clearly rules and ways of behaving when you're on a bike. I guess that was quite a steep learning curve for you, was it?
Oh yeah, that was a difficult day for me. I now recall this wasn't in Amsterdam. Back at the time, I've lived in a small town called Winterswijk that not
Ah, okay,
even Dutch people would really know immediately where that is. Uh,
right,
and I had a fairly small backyard where I was renting my apartment. And one day, the landlord told me, there's this bike in the shed there that you can use. You don't have to buy a bike. And I was like, well, well, I don't really have any use to it because I can't bike. And then just one day I thought to myself, okay, enough is enough. I mean, you live here in this country, you gotta learn. And it took me 2 days, a dozen of falls, and um, wounded knees and elbows and and that sort of stuff, because I can tell you that much: when you are above 150 and you're an adult, it's much scarier to fall than it is when you're a
Down,
kid.
isn't it? Yeah. But hey, there's a great metaphor, I guess, to finish off the interview, isn't it? After what we've been talking about, that it's a bit like learning to ride a bike, isn't it? Learning to kind of communicate in a pandemic. You have to be prepared to fall off and get some grazed knees, but and it can be quite a lot more difficult to learn when you've been doing it for not that you've been doing it for a lot longer, but you've got more at stake. Perhaps you've got a bigger distance between your head and the ground than it was when you were little. So
Exactly. And
yeah.
you've got to come right back up.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. Well, well done as well I mean, I cycle a lot, and the thought of getting on a bike in Amsterdam, it's a bit like getting into a car in Rome. It just doesn't sort of fill me with anything other than a kind of fear. Sort of like
it is quite scary. It is. I still get sometimes a bit at a certain crossroads. I get anxious.
Yeah. Well, that's and again another metaphor. It being kind of anxious and not complacent is not a bad thing either, is it? I guess whether you're on a bike or whether you're an internal communicator. So anyway, look, Tanya, I'm gonna close out by just saying, if anyone would like to get in touch with you, I'm going to put a link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes, if that's okay. And I guess it's okay if anyone, what you said resonates with anyone and they'd like to just connect with you or speak to you directly. That's okay to put that in there.
Yes, of course.
Any other links that you'd like me to put in there? Do you use any? I mean, I'm not Instagram, but well, we could do. Any other channels you use that you'd like to share, or is it mainly LinkedIn that you're?
No, I think LinkedIn is the one.
Perfect. That's fantastic. Well, it's been absolutely wonderful speaking to you, Tanya. And in the spirit of the conversation we've had, I hope things do improve rapidly for all of us, not just you, but everybody. And I think there is grounds for optimism. I think it's just it's the sort of dark before the dawn, isn't it? It's always sort of dark. It's darkest just before the sun comes up. So I think if we have that kind of frame of mind, we'll be we'll be kind of focusing on the right things and not being overly optimistic, but at the same time not being too pessimistic either. So I think what you've said today has been really helpful. So well, thank you very much, and thanks for your time, and really appreciate it, Tanya.
No, thank you. For me, it was also a new experience, so I appreciate that, and also push myself, to do these things, and I think it turned out quite well.
I think it turned out really, really well, and I look forward to listening back to this. I always like listening to the interviews with my interviewees, and I'll look forward to this one. So thank you very much, and take care, Tanya.
Thank you so much, Greg. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye. So thank you for listening to Engaging Internal Comms. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. We'd love to hear your thoughts about the show and any questions, ideas, or feedback that you'd have. Anything you'd like us to cover on future episodes too, please. So you can email us at info@thebigpicturepeople.co.uk, or you can get in touch with us via the contact form at engagingic.com. You can also sign up to our mailing list there, and we'll send you relevant news about the show and anything that we think you might be interested in when it comes to internal communications and employee engagement. If you like the show and you haven't already done so, please subscribe to it directly via your podcast service. And you can also subscribe via the links on our podcast page, which again is engagingic.com. If you like the show, we'd be really grateful if you could leave us a review, and also if you could leave some verbal feedback there as well, not just stars. That's always nice to know that we've been appreciated, and particularly how we've helped you. If you know anyone else who might like the show or might benefit from it, please tell them, please share it with them. Please share the link to our website, engagingic.com. And that will be great, because we want to grow our community. We want to get as many people involved in the show as possible. And the bigger, the better. Okay, thank you.